So the open is dominated by brassy fanfares that are answered by the strings. That was us. Then we took over, leading a lush and sweeping theme, setting up punchy, dramatic blasts from, of all people, the typically introverted French horns. Then it hits me. About 2.5 minutes in, the music turns delicate and swan-like, and we violinists are doing our best to not stand out or be too loud or, heaven forbid, make an errant squeak at a time like this. And my body changed. I tingled neck to knees, and my hair stood up with a thrilling frisson. When I listen to this passage now, I can still tear up. It's as beautiful as the Grand Canyon or Vermeer's Girl with a Pearl Earring, yet it's made of nothing but sound. Just chords. Shifting stacks of notes became more than ephemeral, somehow tactile, and they ignited a fire in my core. And it really was like one of the things that I knew a story I knew I had to tell.
There has got to be more than this.
Craig Havighurst, thank you so much for stopping by, my man.
I'm thrilled to be here.
I've been looking forward to this conversation since we got in touch a couple of months ago. Congratulations, first and foremost, on the publication of your newest book. Not your first, but your newest, Musicality for Modern Humans. I've been enjoying it. I have many questions to ask you, sir. I thought that maybe as a little bit of a getting our way into the book, you could kind of catch me up and us up on what brought you to this moment, just maybe in terms of your having been a Nashville resident these past 30 years.
Yeah, it'll be 30 next year in 26, which is wild to imagine. I played music since I was 7 years old, standard Suzuki violin, took my own roots as a teenager into drums and then bass, and ultimately landed on the guitar as the instrument that makes me happy and that I spend my time with and that I actually got pretty decent at. And through that whole journey and the journey of becoming a music lover, in my teens and early 20s, I began to be very aware that I was part of this sort of subculture or part of the culture or a contingent that had like weird non-mainstream musical taste. And then there was this thing called the mainstream with the commercial radio stations that did not interest me. And then I'm on the left of the dial with my college rock and my public radio and my bluegrass and jazz and stuff like that. And I really began to form questions in my 20s about why we are, as an American people, have the musical diet that we do. What do we listen to and what do we not listen to? What do we include? What do we exclude? Often that question is framed in terms of underrepresented groups and certain kinds of demographics of people. But for me, it was more like stylistically. And as time went on, I got more and more kind of irked or puzzled that in such a rich musical culture, America in the 20th century and then moving into the 21st is the most diverse, most innovative, richest, most extraordinary musical culture that the world has ever produced. That we at least are aware
really
of.
quick, by what metrics? How would you describe that? Why?
Well, one is diversity and the number of genres that have been born in America, or at least sort of taken and then taken to a new place. I mean, we didn't invent classical music, but we did invent an American language of classical music. We certainly invented jazz, and then the blues was born here, and then the blues begat all of the things we know as rock and roll and soul and gospel and
country.
So and country, of course. So I also was aware that, having been a musician, never a professional one, but one that got some training in the bass and how does the bass work in a band, and drums, and what do you have to think through to be a drummer, and a guitar player, what are all the languages the guitar can speak, that I was like, musicians do have a little advantage over people who've not been trained in it to grasp and enjoy music that's maybe more complex, more difficult, more atonal, more something than simple songs. And I thought there's probably a way to translate that. And I know that there'd been this old genre of music appreciation on TV and in books in the 20th century. And I thought maybe that can be invented in some way. So I spent a good part of 10 years trying to come up with the vocabulary and the storytelling technique and the voice that would try to do that for a modern reader.
And is it fair to say that the purpose in writing musicality for modern humans is to, you're going to have to correct me in how I get this wrong, just to encourage people to increase their appreciation and perhaps frequency of listening to music, and for those who already do appreciate music to perhaps expand their palette and not be afraid to find a new kind of music or find something to appreciate about a kind of music previously unfamiliar to them. Yeah. It's kind of in a sense a how-to book or a self-help book, even you could say.
Yes, fair to say. Absolutely. It is a guide. It is a gentle course. It does take an arc. There is a kind of logic to the flow of it. It's to help people understand the forces that have been keeping them from hearing wider ranges of music and giving them some tools to listen to more challenging music. And I said in the back of the first word in the back of the book is it kind of updates and propels music appreciation into the 21st century, because we have infinite choice now, and we have a system of streaming that is really working on us in ways we don't fully appreciate. The algorithm-based playlisting is not evil unto itself. There's ways of using it that are powerful and important, and I think the algorithms do a good job. It certainly recommended a lot of stuff over the last 15 years to me that made me go, glad this tool is here. But you have to be active. You have to be on top of it. You have to know how it's operating on. You have to have a high degree of media literacy to really get a lot out of it. And I think, unfortunately, we have a lot of evidence that over a broad swath of American culture, media literacy is not one of our great strengths.
And help me understand, what is media literacy in this context?
It's understanding that, say, as revealed in Liz Pelly's recent book, The Mood Machine, about Spotify, that Spotify devoted a ton of research and attention and time and resources to prevent people from being, or discourage people from being, musically curious individuals, and wanted to glom them together into large groups that could be satisfied with playlists that put them in a lean back listening posture. Don't turn it off. Don't play anything that's too challenging. And then even more reprehensible for artists, the artist community, they could then put sound-alike ghost artist tracks in these popular playlists, which they would hire as a work for hire from a producer, songwriter, musicians, and then own those tracks for $150 per ordered up musical
thereby
track.
displacing actual musicians
for whom they have to pay royalties. So that was both pernicious and bad for musical culture, and bad for the artist compensation.
And not clear that it's no longer in practice. I think it's probably safe to say that it's absolutely
she only
only increased.
Yeah, she called them out after doing incredible research, and I recommend this book to everybody. It's the best music business book I've read in 10 years.
It's Liz Pelly, and the title of the book.
It's called The Mood Machine.
It just came out a couple of months ago.
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely current. Okay.
But so we have this passivity kind of baked into the system, and it's kind of like in the days of commercial radio. Don't play anything too challenging. Yeah. The worst thing that can happen is some people really like this, because that means some people really hate it, and they'll hit the button and they'll go to another station. And, they're free to operate that way, but the more fun stuff was on the left side of the dial. Individual DJs choosing their own records, idiosyncratic choices, wider choices, more obscure, the stuff that make you go, what is that? And you might not like it the first or second time, and then 10 years later, you realize it's one of your favorites. So it takes some attention, and it takes some wherewithal and knowledge, and I think extra awareness to really lean into music as an active thing. And I think that some difficult music requires the active attention. It's not music that's, a symphony by Shostakovich or Miles Davis's Bitches Brew is not going to grab you while you drive down the highway talking to your kids. So time, place, and setting for those things.
There was something about something you said in the introduction or at the beginning of the book that made me understand emotionally what was kind of driving you to write this. Yeah. And it was an argument that to listen to music, you didn't use this word, but this is the word I supplanted, is to listen to music, to participate in music, is to be vulnerable. Empathetic is the word that you used.
Yeah.
And I think that is like kind of underscores like the why question. It answers the why question. Why should we have a deeper relationship to music than we already do? Like in this world that's so busy. And is that fair to say? Am I getting that correct out of the book? That your argument is the music makes us more empathetic. And so that participating in a deeper relationship with music would make us then even more empathetic and thereby more human. Is that?
I think that's true. And I think you're on to what I was trying to say. And there's a lot of other human virtues that are baked in and born out and that play a role in musical cultures around the world. We can go into examples, but the way you framed that makes me want to say that we definitely get that in the realm of, say, the singer-songwriter. You think of Mary Gauthier, you're going to go into a space with people who are, by a little bit of self-selection, her audience, open-hearted people who are sensitive to they're aware of the humanity of the people around them, and they go to see somebody like Mary speak to them in a way that is empathy distilled, that is, I see you, I hear you, and I feel what you're feeling, or I'll do as much as I can to feel that. This is your art form. This is your chosen path. My argument is that this can be done in instrumental music too, that this is a very key part of instrumental music and the art of improvised music and composed music, which I think are the ones that get cheated. Those are the ones that have been sort of marginalized by the mediascape that has taken instrumental music off of popular radio. That was gone as of the 1980s, and not given a lot of it. And TV networks just hardly ever put on a cellist or a vibraphone player or a conceptual saxophone player, and because the assumption is instrumental music rates less than songs. First of all, music, and when I say rates, I mean who will tune in, the size of the audience. So music is going to be less ratings worthy than political yammering or something sexy or a scandal. So you start with that disadvantage for music in the mediascape, and then you've got instrumental music. No one's going to care. They're going to turn off the TV. Well, that's why we had public broadcasting in the original, in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s version of it. Began to switch in the 21st century a bit as they were more reliant on their listeners and viewers to raise the money to keep them on the air, because we don't want to fund the arts. When you fund the arts, when a society funds the arts, it can put a wider array of styles, including instrumental styles, in the public forum. With courage and with the expectation that the people that need that music and are, give them a chance to at least hear it once and go, oh, wow. So yeah. And that does build empathy. It builds human contact and mutual understanding.
It's more difficult to listen to more nuanced music. Hence, that's going to represent a smaller listenership. And also, and probably more pertinent to the culture we live in, generate less money. And that's a huge reason why people that might otherwise enjoy more difficult music aren't being exposed to it. And thereby is an argument for why perhaps publicly funded avenues of expression maybe have a place in American society today and going forward.
Yeah. But look at the 1960s, the decade I was born. There were numerous jazz artists who were household names. Dave Brubeck had a million-selling record that was in 5/4 time. People discovered what is 5/4 time because it was in articles, and you have him playing Take 5 on major TV specials, on Johnny Carson to the variety shows. In the 60s, Thelonious Monk got on the cover of Time magazine because we had a media that was reached the bulk of the American public. We had mass media. We don't have mass media hardly anymore, but we had a media that was more proud of their own ability to drive culture and to make make calls based on wisdom, discernment. And I think that that's where some of this disadvantage comes in. You have to really go and find these more abstract forms of music on your own. And yeah, you did mention that it will earn less money, but for the individual, it's about carving out time. It's about carving your own temporal budget, your own attention span. What are you spending your time on and with? It does take sitting down or going to a concert. There's the live experience and there's the recorded experience. I'm a big advocate of the recorded experience because it's accessible, it's comfortable. You can make your own tea and you can get, in your own way. You don't have to get a ticket and go downtown and all that stuff. To be in a symphony hall with a symphony, or to be in a beautiful room with a jazz quintet. Now, this is a very special thing, and most people that experience that realize, oh, this is powerful. I got to do this again. Go to Rudy's jazz room, folks. But so it's really about I have this concept called in the book of the musical citizen, and it is definitely analogous to our citizenship in the country, because a democracy requires, and a healthy society requires, people who at least part of their consciousness is mutual benefit, civil discourse, civil behavior, and then participating in a kind of cultural conversation and cultural growth. And if we do that with music, a lot of things would change. I think, we have to take sort of an extra degree of care and time and effort with these disadvantaged but highly artful forms of music.
I think that one of the things that is missing in contemporary culture, and I invite your take on this, that is, if not a prerequisite, absolutely advantageous in terms of helping people appreciate more nuanced music, is the absence or serious decrease in music education in kids. Yeah. And what I'm thinking of is, okay, there's this book. I'm not like a guy that mourns the loss of many possessions I've had in the past. I had this book that I found in a used bookstore a long time ago in my 20s, and I cannot find it, and it breaks my heart because I don't think it's findable. And I found it I went to college in this little town in Bellingham, Washington, and there was this great used bookstore there, Henderson's. I think it's still there, right across the street from Michael's. Liked Michael's also, but it's not as organized. Liked Henderson's better. And I would just wander through there and grab books. That's how I have another addiction to books. And one of the ones I stumbled on there was called The Power of Music, and it was kind of a glorified pamphlet that was published in the 50s by Menk, by MENC, which is like the musicians something educational outfit. It was that chapter. Maybe they're still going, maybe not. But all it was photographs of people enjoying and consuming and relating to music, black and white photos. And it just made me cry every single time I'd see it. It was like the opening picture of it was a big full page spread, and it must have been taken at a rehearsal, but it was of a conductor, and it was of his face turned into the audience, but all you saw was him, and he was looking at the audience, and he was just like, his hands were gripped, and he was just trying to pull a little bit more out of the orchestra. So powerful, right? And then you flip the page over, and it's a picture of maybe a snapshot from the 20s or 10s. Maybe I picture like an Eastern Bloc country of this enormous man in kind of a clown outfit holding a big bass drum, looking at the camera with his arm out. Yeah. And it was like that too. Yeah. Right. Okay. Anyway, there's a photo in it.
That's nice.
And it's a picture of this older man he's in a classroom setting, and he's holding a violin, and he's surrounded by 9 and 10-year-olds, and you can tell he's explaining to them the parts of the violin. Yeah. And that picture, picture's worth 1,000 words. I think about that picture a lot when I think about things that are missing in the country, missing in the contemporary world that I find myself in. And one of those things is just this, like, kids don't have a relationship to the mechanics, and by mechanics I include music theory in that, of how music is made. And I think that's absolutely one of the causes of sort of this like limiting palette that that you describe in the book, because the taste isn't there. So I think that part of the reason why you just talk about the 50s and 60s, and you would see Thelonious Monk on the cover of Time. It was that he was known by wider audiences because kids grew up playing clarinet. I know he didn't play clarinet, but they played instruments. It was part of their daily experience. Thus, they were interested in people who are really good at it. Whereas I feel like nowadays we're in this culture where music is something that celebrity, beautiful people do on a stage under lights, and it's a thing that's a spectacle and it's glamorous.
Yes.
And just to button this all up is one of the things that attracted me to bluegrass and roots music after kind of growing up in the musical desert. Really, my parents never bought a record in their life. That's fine. But I was like a Fish junkie in high school, and that was good. I thought about them too when you were talking about, Frank Zappa being kind of an early conduit towards some wild music, and you were like, not for me until 10 years later.
Fish is an indicator is an audience of very musically curious souls.
Yeah, for sure.
I like the Fish audience a lot for their musicality, I believe.
Yeah.
You've got so much going on in there. It's really true. And in terms of the exposure to seeing people react to music, I use this little tactic a lot and recommend it. Like at a concert of music that you're trying to find your way into it, study the faces of the people in the audience and try to find the person who's most lost in it, most absorbed, most moved. And if I do that, sometimes I get very teary. I can go from, I'm really enjoying this to, oh my Lord.
Seeing it reflected in the faces.
Seeing it reflected in their faces. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's happened many, many times to me. And I didn't do any kind of methodical research on the decline of music education in our public schools. I've read about it for years. I think, I've read studies, I've seen anecdotes. I didn't pen it down in this book. I wasn't trying to document that. Yeah. And I know that a lot of schools do bring in interesting musicians of all kinds all the time on kind of programmatic basis. So somebody will have a chance to see, there's a young woman in Central North Carolina now who's doing great work with her clawhammer banjo, Appalachian ballads, and or like Jeff Coffin or somebody who takes a saxophone into school. Kids get bug-eyed around this stuff. And I think that it's too much of a special day instead of something that's kind of woven into their fabric of their lives. Mm-hmm. But then of course there's families that are very involved in music. And I can tell you the number one indicator of the people that I've met, and you may be an exception, but I think that this is, you've noticed this too. You meet somebody that's high skilled, tell me about your background. I grew up in a musical family. Mm-hmm. It carries forward to feel it and experience it as a child in your home. There's really, that's one of the power indicators of somebody's long-term growth and journey.
I've read those statistics somewhere. It's like teach your kid how to play an instrument and it'll affect positively almost every other aspect of their lives.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could do something a bit unorthodox. We may or may not make the finished pod, but you talk about I love formative experiences, right? So guests that come on the podcast, I'm just like, what was the deal? Like, why'd you get into this? Some people have a really concrete story. Some people have more of I grew up in a musical family kind of story. Yeah. Both are fine. I loved the experience that you describe in the beginning of the book because it was so specific. And I wonder if we can play that piece of music. And you could kind of walk me through, or I would just like to get your response to it and whatever you wanted to say.
Yeah. I mean, I tried so hard to figure out that Strauss, what to say about that Strauss. Now then once I decided to make it the opening anecdote, you're talking about me in Youth Symphony, right?
Yeah. I just love that you talked about the French horns as usually kind of being muted and introverted, which was a nice way of describing an instrument of suddenly like in this context being brash and boisterous.
Well, would you like me to read it or do you want to play it first? How would you like to do it?
Play it and maybe you could, I don't want to just read it. Read the opening chapter and then we'll listen to the music.
Okay. And you may mix it in later, but I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I'm about 15, 16 years old. I'm in the youth orchestra that made this all-state youth orchestra. So for the first time, I'm out of my local youth orchestra and in a kind of the cream of the crop, I guess, of us young people. And I did not go on to a career in violin, but it was one of my high points of getting this audition and getting there. And so the piece I remember, I do not remember any other piece but this Opus 59 Suite from Der Rosenkavalier by Richard Strauss. It's an opera, but this is an orchestral suite that was written from the themes by somebody else. But all of the actual harmony and the texture is Richard Strauss. So the open is dominated by brassy fanfares that are answered by the strings. That was us. Then we took over, leading a lush and sweeping theme, setting up punchy, dramatic blasts from, of all people, the typically introverted French horns. Then it hits me. About 2.5 minutes in, the music turns delicate and swan-like, and we violinists are doing our best to not stand out or be too loud or, heaven forbid, make an errant squeak at a time like this. And my body changed. I tingled neck to knees, and my hair stood up with a thrilling frisson. When I listen to this passage now, I can still tear up. It's as beautiful as the Grand Canyon or Vermeer's Girl with a Pearl Earring, yet it's made of nothing but sound. Just chords. Shifting stacks of notes became more than ephemeral, somehow tactile, and they ignited a fire in my core. And it really was like one of the things that a story I knew I had to tell.
Mm-hmm. Can we listen to it? Just for fun.
Be lovely.
Yeah.
Crank it up. It's a hard piece too. I can't believe we played it.
This is you in there?
Yeah.
Kid?
Hear the big blast coming.
Chills.
Here's where it gets really sweet. Big oboe part there.
Modulation.
Mm-hmm.
Man, amazing.
Yeah, that passage right there, that 45 seconds is really where it's at for me. Yeah.
Okay, that's just
Thanks for zeroing in on that. It's a cool memory.
Well, it's a personal pleasure to listen to that music. And what I want to say is that, like, I experienced, I think, firsthand right there, what you're describing about in the book, which is in that moment while we were listening, I was giving myself completely to the music, meaning I was like totally listening to what was going on. And there's so much going on. The interplay of the layers of the different instruments, the call and answer. I don't think you need to have this background to appreciate it, but like you can hear the modulations in the progression, and I noticed in that moment, giving myself to the music, it wasn't entirely the result of my own effort. After a minute of just like listening, all of a sudden the music is pulling you in, and it has my whole attention. So
I think so many of us want to give that attention. We don't think we have the time. We don't know how to set it up so that we're really in that place. And I admit that I don't listen to a ton of symphonic music at home. I don't think it doesn't hit me quite right. It's so dynamic. You can be like, it's really quiet, and then it's blowing your speakers up, and that's cool, and it works really well live. I mean, there's nothing like something like that in a concert hall. And most of the music I listen to at home is a little more mid in the dynamics. It's got dynamics, but I listen to a lot of jazz, small ensembles, chamber music, solo piano, things like that. But the thing that I'd like people to take away is that we're so, because of the media that I've been describing, the way we're raised, these last 30 years in a mediascape that's shown us 99% songs and not much music based on that style of composed music, which can only really accomplish those tricky harmonic motions, those layers. You need a composer to organize that before anybody plays a note. So I talk about the three big buckets of music, the three big styles or approaches to music, one being composed music, which only it can do those things well. And then there's improvised music, the realm of jazz, jam band, and fluid, maybe music, just kind of street music from New Orleans, things like that, where only it does certain things well that only it can do. And then popular music, which we spend so much of our time on, it has gifts that the other two can't reach. It's more of a storyteller. It's more of a communion, bringing together and a kind of let me share myself with you, and I want to know who you are by the way you react to my songs. And that's a sound-based art form that we just heard. That is where, and I'm leaning into the sound-based styles of music because I believe that song-based music is doing really well in our culture. It has all kinds of platforms. The good stuff gets amplified. I'm amazed at how well our culture does with Sierra Farrell and Billy Strings, and even people who preserve great country music. They get carried along. If they're good, they're finding an audience. But our listening diet is like literally statistically like 97% song-based. And then the little 2.5% is all the classical, all the jazz, all of the experimental, all and this little tiny little slice of the graph.
I mean, as I understand it too, historically, the public, the audience for classical music has always been a small fraction of the overall music enjoying public. So that's not new, but I think that what you're saying is that the percentage is probably even lower than it has ever been.
It used to be more less class-based than people think. If you were time transported to New York City in 1910 or 1915, the bricklayers loved Enrico Caruso. They loved they went to the opera. They knew this stuff. Now, of course, popular music hadn't blown up and become rock and roll and all of its subgenres after that. But, we as Americans have loved and indulged in fine arts music and difficult music going back generations.
This is, I think, apropos. I was reading a biography of Miles Davis a couple of years back, and there's a watershed moment that stands out in my mind in reading that book, which I think touches on what we're talking about. And he was talking about mid career, Bitches Brew. I think it was right before Bitches Brew, but he was invited to do a West Coast tour, and he showed up, and he was going to do a show with this guy, Steve Miller, and it was at the Fillmore in San Francisco, and he showed up and found out that he was the opener. And I think he refused to play. I can't remember if ultimately he did, but he was shocked that he was, in Miles fashion, just like, let's say pretty upset that he was opening for this just idiot California kid. And at the same time, I'm just like, that is a cultural watershed moment. I mean, Steve Miller's like, an icon in his own right. Back then he wasn't, but I'm sure he was playing Space Cowboy at that night. And the audience, like that music is such a wide, enormous appeal. And I feel like there's a connection. I think that it was even talked about, if not in that biography, in another jazz history book about. It correlated to sort of the decline of the nightclub scene as popular music, as the folk rock music took kind of precedence in the 70s. The young people, they wanted to go to the show and the big show, and sound gear got better, so the audiences could get bigger. And that just had a mortal effect on the nightclub scene and all those small jazz ensembles that are so wonderful.
Mm-hmm. But you're pointing out something important about that era, that they included Miles Davis and his very difficult post Bitches Brew music in rock environments. And the Grateful Dead audience, the Fillmore audience, and the rock audience, they ate that stuff up. And you had Zappa in that era. You had Wayne Shorter leaves Miles Davis's band of the late 60s, which is my favorite music of all time, by the way. If anybody cares, that I think that the late 60s Miles Davis quintet is the stuff.
Is that kind of blue era? Or
no,
that's
after.
Almost
a decade after. Another one of his many shifts. Albums like Field of Kilimanjaro, and so Wayne joins Weather Report with
Jaco Pastorius.
Jaco
Pat Metheny.
No, he was not in there, but he's in that scene. And Pat Metheny was doing very well in the 70s. Pat Metheny grew big audiences. The world of jazz fusion is often kind of criticized or dismissed or something like that. To me, that's the stuff, man. That's where you get funk and rock ideas, the power, the amplification, the drive,
the synths
and
the game.
Synthesizers moved in, but you also had a lot of it made on piano. Joe Zawinul is the pianist in Weather Report, and great composing and indelible tunes that became very, what is it from Weather Report's Heavy Weather? Birdland. People were able to get into thematic music that had musical themes, and remember that hook, and then let the improvisers go crazy. And there was a lot of paying attention. Leon Russell goes on the road for years in that period with Newgrass Revival. Now, Newgrass Revival was a vocal band by and large, but they played instrumental. They played instruments really well. The both bands, when they were both, Newgrass would open and then become part of the bigger Leon Russell band. Lots of grooving and playing and letting the music flow and changing their minds in halfway and listening relentlessly to each other and enjoying that fusion, that conversation that's going on in a really good band. And I think a lot of that ethos is back. I'm actually putting out shows on the String that feature some of these great improvisational bands built on
the
Southern
String is
soul.
your show on WMOT
yep.
every week at...
We do Mondays at 8 p.m. and early Sunday mornings is the repeat. But
on MOT here in Nashville, and it's also, you can stream it. Just a little, make sure that people know where to go.
Yeah.
Continue.
But I see a really healthy kind of musical direction in the jam band world, where a lot more Americana and jam bands are sort of fusing together. And so I did these profiles of Robert Randolph, who came through the Sacred Steel tradition and plays pedal steel guitar in a rock and roll jam band fashion. With gospel overtones and with funk and soul history. And then another guest in this little sequence was Luther Dickinson of the North Mississippi All-Stars, who is a musical explorer like crazy. We played records from four different records in 1 hour with him, one of which is an electronic experimental thing he did all in a studio with friends during the pandemic, trading tracks and ideas. Another was a pure improvisation with John Medeski at an art gallery in Mississippi, where he and Dominic Davis, the bass player from here in Nashville, just played luscious, flowing instrumental music. So he's brilliant. Marcus King, killer old school band, Allman Brothers kind of lineage. And I find, I don't want anybody to read this book and think, because I'm advocating for sound-based music, that in any way I am dismissing or minimizing the power of song-based music. But when you get both in one place, you get musicians who really know how to think and listen and flow, and are super adept. Billy Strings and his band. I think there's better performance and more musicianship in that jam space, and more American roots in that jam space than there was in the 90s, for example.
As you're talking about this, I was reminded of a section in the book where you highlight some younger players that sort of exemplify aspects of what you're talking about. I wonder if you might bring one or two or three to light.
I'd love to. I'm going to bring one to light because I want people to have to find out who the highly musical humans are. I'm going to start kind of doing
Very good.
framing other profiles of people I think are really special as highly musical humans. I just came up with this silly designation because of the title of the book. But I thought people would read and go, okay, dude, who are you talking about? All this abstract conversation about music theory and, give me some stuff I can focus on. And one, there's the playlists that go with the book when it's called Musicality for Humans, but Highly Musical Humans is out there. So you can go find this, but
they're on Apple and Spotify and all of the normal places where you would get a playlist.
Yeah, Apple, Spotify, and Tidal is where I was able to put this big long playlist is the master things that are referenced in the book. And then the Highly Musical Humans is referencing the particular pieces I want people to listen to by, let me choose. There's a high profile classical musician, two high profile jazz musicians, one pop songwriter, modern pop songwriter. But I'm going to go with Allison Miller, one of the jazz artists, because she's so extraordinary and she has background in roots music. She's been the drummer for Natalie Merchant for many years. She played with the Indigo Girls and some of the women in that contingent. And she's New York based, but she's a composer. She writes jazz pieces with harmonic sophistication, with some abstraction. She has these killer players that she gets together with, including Jenny Scheinman, a violinist who plays with Bill Frisell.
Yeah, I've seen her
and
play.
with Robbie Fulks.
Yeah.
And with other
That's
interesting,
eclectic.
I know. So I think Jenny hung the moon, and she puts out brilliant songwriter albums too. So the fact that I could write about little Jenny in the Allison Miller chapter, it's not a chapter, it's like 800 word profile, but there's like 6 of these profiles through the book that just have you go, okay, let's just take a moment with a specific contemporary musician. A lot of the musical references I have in here are from the 20th century, they're historic references. And so I'm like, well, who's now? So every highly musical human in the book had to be under 55 years old. And, these are prime of life. You can go buy new records by them right now. And Allison Miller's last record is called Rivers in Our Veins. And I got to see her perform the whole thing live at the Savannah Music Festival last year, but I was already interested in this record, already on it. And she got a grant to do a song cycle or a cycle of pieces, just inspired by 6 waterways in the Northeast near where she lives, Hudson River, Chesapeake Bay area. So she would go and she would meet some scientists, and she would get ideas, and she would learn terminology, and she would just let this filter into how she wrote instrumental music. And one of the things that's fabulous about it is that it has a part in the band for tap dancers. So there's this extra percussive quality, this timbral texture that we never hear in music really very often. And it's woven in, and it's treated like a percussion instrument because she's the kit drummer. She's in conversation with these 2 musicians' feet. And it's fantastic, and it's original. And there's parts of this album that are a little bit hard to parse and a little bit abstract and a little bit dissonant. There's also parts that are just groovy and flowing and lovely. And I think it's a great example of contemporary jazz that will alleviate some fears of certain people that to get into contemporary jazz means going down a route of cacophony. That's one of the things that driven me crazy and that I really want to address is that people go, well, modern classical music, that's scary stuff. It's discordant. It doesn't have any structure. I don't know where I am. Well, there's music like that, but then there's a whole spectrum that's been made from the 50s to this day that is tonal and consonant and lovely and lyrical. And I do my best in the playlist to show examples of all of them. But also I have a chapter about dissonance, because I think dissonance is something that people really need to grapple with and try to develop a feeling for and hopefully a love for, but you don't do it by diving all the way into like Albert Eiler or, something extreme first. You want to get dissonance in little measurable doses where the harmonies shift a little bit interesting, a little sour, a little odd, and then more and more. And then you find that with time, your ears crave the spice, the sour, the off, the angular, and mine certainly does.
Who's a gateway artist that comes to mind?
That's a great question.
Introduce you to dissonance.
Well, Julian Lage is, I think, the finest jazz musician of our time. I think he's one of those, once a century kind of people, and his guitar playing is so lovely, and you can hear in any given album visions of both. But tunes, and he's got an album with Nels Cline that's quite gnarly, and then a lot of his composing is quite sweet. So if you listen to a sampling of Julian Lage, you'll get, it's excellent music. It's going to be top tier stuff, but you'll find stuff that makes you go, I don't know if I'm ready for that, and ooh, that's pretty interesting. But I always knew as I was a kid that like dissonant chords in pop music got me, and I certainly remembered in REM from their first Chronic Town EP. That was like right in my 14, 15-year-old musical development sweet spot, where some of those power chords had one weird note. They sounded just like what was on the pop radio, rock radio, but they had one edgy note in there. And I'm like, the power of that one interval to make your whole brain go, huh? Is really one of the things to chase.
You talked about in your love of Squeeze, and obviously that song Tempted, which is a very famous song. Everybody knows the song. It's an earworm song, a delight to the ears, and actually is not quite dissonant, but ambitious chordally speaking. There's a modulation in it and some out chords, and it's moving. It's not your normal 1-4-5. But then some members of that band reformed, and the next record was like a bridge too far for you in your teenage life. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it lived with you in the tape, in your car on cassette in time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is an anecdote I tell to really try to affirm to people or really remind them, don't make a judgment about new music too quickly. That you really can't know. It's like tasting scotch or bourbon for the first time. And it's, for most people, that's going to be a real shocker. And very few people go, that is my favorite flavor I've ever tasted. But give them a few sips and some time and experience, and they'll be like, that is the best flavor on earth. And you learn what you like and what you really dislike. With time, I realized I'm a bourbon guy. I do not like scotch, and I never will, and I don't have to. And I can identify the qualities that make one appealing to me, but that doesn't mean that scotch is not a great liquor tradition and a recipe and a whole thing. But it's all about just give something a little time before you start to. We're very inclined in our culture, especially the social internet culture period. We younger people are. It's been shown that they judge things quicker than they used to. There's a very interesting anecdote which I couldn't pin down enough to put in the book, but I love sharing. An interview with Roz Chast, the cartoonist, with Terry Gross. And I wish I could have found it, but I know I heard it. And what she said in there was that she does workshops with children, and they draw. She gives them a drawing prompt, they draw, and then they compare notes and they show each other their work. And up until about the age of 12, the kids' observations about the other kids' drawings are, you put a heart in there, they describe it. After 12, they start to tell you, I don't like that, I like that. They start to have value judgment instead of the analytical mindset. And who would know that a younger mind is more acute, more attuned to analysis than a slightly older mind as a kid grows into puberty, when they want to be like, I like that, I don't like that, I like that, I don't like that. They're like more solipsistic, and they're like more, what you're supposed to satisfy me and my immediate needs and my likes. And music is, there's too much great music that certainly would put people off on their first listen.
Well, it seems like one of the, to unpack the pleasure that music gives is,
I like that phrase,
that it pleases and challenges. Music that pleases you too much it tells its whole story on the first play. You never come back to it. It's just like, there's nothing there. But music that displeases, that challenges too much, it's like, God, I don't know if I can hit play today. You know, it's like, I feel that way about some music that's really popular in my group. I'm just like, I just kind of want to hear something that's a little less like, pay attention to me. But there's that, it's just a fine line between, and I think that all music is kind of seeking that line to greater or lesser effect. A piece of advice I seek from you for one such as I, who I'm a guy, I like music, I play a lot of music, and yet I find myself challenged by something that probably a lot of people are challenged by, which is that now that we live in a society where we have access to the entire compendium of recorded music, the bookshelf on that on which that music lives has not increased, meaning the amount of time that any one person has to listen to music is basically a constant, right? Yeah. So I have not responded very favorably spiritually to Spotify in terms of, I've just felt overwhelmed by it. Yeah. You know, where I grew up, like you, I would put a CD, a tape in the deck, tape in the tape deck, or played a CD a little bit later, and then when playlists started coming out, I'm just like, how do I pick? And then the answer is like, oh, let the algorithm do it. And I'm just like, fuck the algorithm. Like, less algorithms in my life, please. Anyway, what is your advice to somebody who wants to get out there and yet feels overwhelmed by the sheer choice available?
Yeah, who do we turn to for advice who's not the people who will give us the stuff we already know? Our immediate peers, our friends that we go to shows with and that we know have our very similar tastes. Certainly they're going to be giving you new artists in your wheelhouse that you like. But how to get a little further out, you know, you might think about, who do I know that's into jazz or that went to see that weird electronic artist, and give me two things to listen to, you know, ask them for the thing. I also, as a music journalist, humbly say that and music journalism is not as rich and robust and directed as it used to be, where you can go and kind of find those trusted writers. But there's one that I followed for years named Ted Gioia, Gioia.
Oh yeah,
one of
I
the
follow him on
fine
Substack.
Writers. He's on Substack, and he just put out his. Every year he does 100 records. It's just a list. He doesn't go into a lot of commentary, but he listens to the music of the world. Like you'd be less likely to find a Persian folk singer in his list as Billy Strings and Brian Sutton. He put that on his list, and I was really from the Legion, which made me happy to see that on his list. But you know, he's somebody who's got very developed taste and very just experience. You know, I couldn't process as much music as he does. Somebody wrote to him once and said, "How many records do you listen to in a year to come up with this eclectic list of 100?" And he said something like 600, 700 records. And he just must have a lifestyle, a daily routine that involves just putting things in the player all the time. And of course, he would have relationships with record companies, sources that would be feeding him on those unusual places. I think also record labels comes to mind. There's they can be trusted curators. I follow a label out of Chicago called International Anthem that does contemporary jazz and what you might call post-hip hop instrumental music. Some of it's pretty weird, but there's tons of it that's just freaking great. Micaiah McCraven is an artist I found on the International Anthem label, a drummer, producer, remixer, scene maker, improviser. Micaiah McCraven's amazing. And all the people around him. I once sat down and I made a chart, like, let me just make the names of all the people that are on this record that he did, and then with this record that he did. And these names are starting to correlate. Alex, Joel Ross, vibes player from this scene. He also crosses over with people from the great instrumental rock band Tortoise. And I love Tortoise. Tortoise is a sound-based, groove-based band that will tickle you and challenge you. And I would say get TNT by Tortoise and see what you think. I mean, it's amazing. One of my top 10 albums of all time. And it's just sonic and it's a sound journey. But I'm like, okay, who's in there? Oh, Jeff Parker, the guitar player. He plays with Mekhi McCraven. And then he's over here playing, what does he do? And then use these tools that we have to chase musicians from one setting to another. Now, I have huge complaints about the way streaming is structured in terms of credits and making sure that you can tell who each artist is on any given session, on any given record. I wrote an article about this past year. It's a very spotty thing, and Spotify doesn't even have credits. Apple added them recently. Tidal, my streaming service of choice, has done, I think, the best job of credits. But when I was a kid, I got Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. And then I thought, well, who's this Bill Evans guy playing the piano? Oh my God. He's got a bunch of records, and he's not a leader on this session, but he's a leader on these sessions. I had to learn what that term meant eventually. Oh, there are all these mix and match people, but on this record, on Waltz for Debbie, Bill's the leader, and his compositions, and he's got other all-stars in his band who have played with other people. And you use liner notes to find your route. And there was also a good jazz radio as a kid growing up in North Carolina that I heard. So it's a connect the dots kind of a world, and chase those little information points.
I know I share your joy in knowing the stories behind the music.
Sure.
And especially when it comes to the story of jazz, like those records were a big part of my college, Kind of Blue, obviously. And then through Kind of Blue to Bill Evans, from Bill Evans to Stan Getz, and like Corcovado, Quiet Nights, Quiet Stars. And it was really fun to read the stories and read the history and what was going on in the scene at that time. And that enhanced the pleasure of the music, because you're just like, you had more invested in it. I notice this now too, because as I said, I'm often overwhelmed by the sheer volume of music coming at me at all times, even within the genre that I practice, like Americana. There's so many freaking, like if you go the Friday list, every Friday list from Americana Music Association is more records than I can listen to.
Yep.
But I noticed that if I take a second and read a review, or even go to an artist's website on their newest record and like read a little bit about what was going on, not always, but sometimes it's unlocked something for me where I'm like, oh, I like, what's going on, or she's working with that guy, or she's from here. Or, like there's these context clues that you never know what's going to like awaken something inside of you.
That's exactly right, man. That's well said.
And then you said this one other thing in your book, and I know that you're focusing on recorded music for obvious reasons, accessibility you mentioned, but you did make this little caveat in the book about the power of live music to expose people.
Oh God!
And let's not discredit that, because
I mean, that's really that
might be the easiest one. Is like my whole thing with people is go to the fucking show, wherever you live. Just pay a little bit of attention to what's going on in your community, and pay the small cover. You can afford it, and go take a chance on some live music. I'm not saying like you have to support every local scene, but it doesn't hurt.
And festivals are the best bang for your buck, because that's where you can go and see 2 things and 5 things you don't, and then that one thing that changes your life. I went to Merlefest every year religiously for about 11, 12 years in my 20s and 30s, because it was like, I knew something was going to happen, and I'd be thrilled. And that's where I discovered Gillian and Dave, and the great, who's that wonderful, Leftover Salmon. Saw them when nobody knew who they were. And Donna the Buffalo, had a major epiphany with them. And
Rhiannon Giddens had to start it there through the Carolina Chocolate Drops, I think. And
so they would have broken out after my they were.
When did you stop going?
Probably 2005 or something like that. It was too far a drive into North Carolina, et cetera, et cetera. But
I won the song contest in 2007, so just a little shout out for old Corbin Merlefest.
Yeah, it's a great So festivals are, there's certain kind of people who think we're festival people, and other people who really need to get to their first music festival.
Yeah,
and then maybe one that, the hyper eclectic ones I write about in the back of the book in the last chapter about Big Ears in Knoxville. And a big shout out to Big Ears, because I think Big Ears is a great brand for the entire approach, the entire philosophy that I want to embrace. Just keep your radar up and be hungry for something that makes you go, oh, I've not heard that before. I'm the sound of surprise is a phrase that the great Whitney Balliet, the jazz writer for the New Yorker for decades, and a guy I've read a lot, he called jazz the sound of surprise. But I think that term applies to any life in music. Surprise me. I would personally rather hear new music played live anew than necessarily hear an old favorite. I tend to keep moving forward. And I realize I'm a little different in that respect, that music has a nostalgic place in our heart. It carries with us eras and memories, and that's important. I just think that's the story that gets told relentlessly by the music industry, that it is really about taking you back instead of moving you forward in time in your life. That there seems to be a sense that, well, the marketing proves it. Oldies radio, cover bands that, tribute bands, they make more money on a given night at a given bar in Peoria, Illinois, than a new band. I'm encouraging people to be the person that goes to see the new band and go, I don't know what I'm going to hear. Surprise me.
To offer a take on that, because I understand that people, you mentioned that people statistically stop listening to new music at 20, or you drop that. I can't remember exactly how you put it, but 20 was the age, and then they want to just hear that same music. And I understand that's because I'm like you. There's a nostalgic element in me because there's a connection to happy memories in music.
Heck
I think
yeah.
that's basic
Fire
to
Up
people.
London Calling by The Clash, and
Absolutely.
I will
in your
be
best friend's basement.
banging, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I will be right there.
So here's I'm always kind of trying to think. I'm always hearing these conversations through maybe an outsider who's curious but timid, and so I tend to want to go into actionable sound bites or ideas that you can just practice some of these things, because I'm completely with you that this is only going to make your life better to take a chance and discover some new music. It just seems like kind of intimidating. Anyway, that argument of wanting to the connection between music and happy memories is the same argument why to go see new music with somebody you care about, because now you have a new memory, and your life and your relationship, especially with somebody else, is it grows and expands. It creates a new shared memory, and that's connected to that music. And then when you go and you listen to that music again, you get to relive that, and that is so special. And I think that is the thing that mostly dies when people get a little older, is they stop doing things that are associated with music that are important life memories. And so that's all they have to, it stops being the soundtrack of their life, is what I'm saying.
That's a neat thought, to have a kind of music explorer buddy, somebody that is, and I have friends like this where we're like, I'm not sure what this is, but
or spouse,
we should check this out.
Or kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go to a festival, if you took a chance on a festival like Big Ears with your friend, you're going to come out of each different session going, how'd you feel about that? I don't know. I loved it. Not for me.
Yeah.
And then the next one's the reverse. And I think that's wonderful. And sometimes you're going to be like, I've been here for 3 tunes. I ain't getting this, and I'm leaving now. And there's something else down the street. And that's okay too. Bail on stuff that's really rubbing you the wrong way. No problem. Life is short, and you said it. The choice is expanding like the universe is expanding. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
The amount of choice. And so the last thing we need is mediocre music made by a machine. The idea that this is some sort of problem to be solved, artificially generated music, is bonkers, just evil. Like I can't even get my head around why anybody would make any effort to try to make a computer that could generate music. Now, a computer based tool that helps humans generate music is a different thing. But they said this about synthesizers. Synthesizers were wonderful instruments. But yeah, let's just leave AI music on the side of the road, man.
This has been a really fascinating conversation, and I have learned a thing or two, Craig. And I wonder if there's anything else you'd like to share before we go that we haven't touched on, or something that's burning a hole in your heart.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the middle of the book would come off to some people as music theory, quote unquote. But I sort of described what I did was going to the world of music theory, taking some notes, an understanding enough to come back and explain it to anybody, and not try to teach you music theory, but try to teach you how musical people use it, which is kind of different. I'm teaching you to enjoy a baseball game, not how to coach a baseball team. So I try to, and one of the things that I want people to really come away with is a sense of adventure with harmony, and to try to listen to how harmony functions in music that is simple, that they love. Country music, it functions a certain way. In classical music, it functions another way. There's many more key changes, many more what we call modulations, where the harmonic bass just suddenly goes in another place, but then it'll come home. What is that? And the notion of tension, harmonic tension, and resolution. And being aware, I don't want people to go, oh, that was a dominant tonic resolution. But to go, I felt the music go here into a place that was tense and then resolved. Resolution is a normal term. Everybody knows the term resolution. Something feels like it's coming home. I've heard, and studying jazz harmony on the guitar really helps. Studying the bass lines of pop rock tunes and jazz tunes really helps. But yeah, listen to harmony with ears where you're inside the musicians in the background. What's the support behind the vocalist doing? How much harmonic support are they giving? And is there a chord that makes you go, oh, that was different? I love bluegrass. Like I got into Tony Rice bluegrass, right? And so many of us did, whoa, and one of the reasons that Tony is so powerful, his music in the 80s, late 70s and 80s, is that a lot of the chords are the same chords Jimmy Martin or Bill Monroe were using, 1-4-5, maybe a minor. But then he'll find this neat passing chord, which he picked up from loving George Benson's jazz guitar or Wes Montgomery, or he was a major jazz fan. So he would find these chords that, when I was a young picker, going, how do you find that little motion, that little thing? Because harmony moves, right? That's one of the things I want people to have their radar up about. There's 3 chapters about rhythm as well, and there's similar insights and rewards of listening actively to the rhythmic motion of a tune. But yeah, harmony is such a world, and I think we've been trained to listen to that melody and that singer in the foreground and their story, but how is the music functioning around them, and how does it work as a whole? And so, go forth in peace and listen widely, and listen to music that's past a certain degree of critical and popular and cultural acclaim. If you want to go and study jazz, you can't go wrong listening to Charles Mingus. It's a little difficult at times, but you're not listening to a hack, right? Listen to the musicians that the culture has taken seriously in our canon. But of course, the canon should be wide enough to include lots of different types of Americans and people. So, but
that's a conversation for another appointment, which I look forward to.
Man, great time.
Hey, Craig, thank you so much for stopping by. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate it.
For me as well. Thank you, Korby.
The new book is Musicality for Modern Humans. I'm going to put it right here so you can see it, and we'll share it on the gram when the episode posts. And I wish you all the best, my friend.
Thank you. You too.
Peace. Hey, thanks for watching. Go ahead and click here to like and subscribe. You can click right there to watch another video, or click here to watch a playlist featuring songs of the Morse Code Podcast. Okay, thank you very much.